So interest rates are going crazy at the moment, aren't they? And used performance and sports car values are coming down. Is it going to trigger a price crash? Well, I'm on my way to go and see my good friend James, who has a fleet of used sports and performance cars, and he's just sold his classic Porsche at auction for a price which I think was a complete bargain. And I'm currently trying to sell my 14-year-old Aston Martin privately. So it's of interest to both of us. And I think interest rates are affecting the used car market in two very different ways. Good to see you again, James.
You too, Ben.
Last time we spoke like this on the Dadcars channel, we talked about the need to sell my car. And I delayed on that, but I finally put it up for sale now. It's been up coming up for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
No sort of real solid interest on it yet. But I've also noticed that prices of DB9s and other kind of old performance cars are dropping. I'm seeing lots more adverts coming up saying reluctant sale and at a price which seems quite low, as opposed to, you know, think back a year or two when people were putting stuff up for sale and now saying just testing the market, and then it was quite high. Do you know what I mean? I'm feeling a bit like we might be in a bit of a used car price storm at the moment. Have you experienced any of that?
Yeah, so there's definitely a little bit of that going on. First thing I say to you in particular is if your car's only been up for sale for 3 weeks, don't panic.
Okay.
Like, if you said to me it's been up for 3 months and nobody's come to see it, I'd be going, okay, you might need to change something.
Okay.
Usually the price.
Yeah.
But the fact is, I think Aston Martins, like Maseratis, like Lotus, like some Ferraris, they're not quick sellers.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless you've got your car out there at like a suspiciously low price, in which case it can actually also put some people off.
Yeah.
Like, I just wouldn't be too worried about it. Like, you know that that's a good car.
Yeah.
So, and you know that the price you're asking is fair, and you've been honest about the condition and everything else. So right now, I wouldn't be panicked.
Okay.
This is not a great time of year to sell the car. You should have put it up for sale when we spoke last.
I know. I just kept putting it off.
But I know we were talking about this off camera as well. Yeah, there are some weird things going on with the market at the minute. There's a whole bunch of factors which have all kind of combined to create the perfect storm for used cars. First up is an interest rate rise. So we were talking earlier, the base rate's gone from almost nothing to
0.1% to 5% is the base rate.
Which is huge.
Yeah, and I actually think that the interest rates going up like that is affecting the used car market in two different ways.
Yeah.
So the first one, I think, is obviously the cost of finance, because a lot of expensive performance cars, a lot of them are financed as well, aren't they? You know, a lot of people buy them in that way. So the cost of finance has gone up. I mean, what was the cost of finance like 18 months ago or something?
So 18 months ago, it was very different to now. So depending on whether you're looking at new or used, you know, in terms of new cars, finance is always a little bit more aggressive because often it's backed by manufacturers who are making money on the product and the finance. So often you'll get like even 0% APR deals or whatever, or like, you know, cars, or like 2, 3 and a bit percent. That's risen to like 4, 5, 6%, which actually in a lot of ways isn't, you know, a rise of 3%. It's a doubling. You know, it's 3 or 4 percentage points. On used stuff, again, depending on how you're financing and what you're financing, interest rates have gone from typically I was seeing between like 6 to 8%, like a couple of years ago. And now you're looking often at like 10 to 12.
Wow, yeah.
Which, if you're looking at something big and meaty, that's a lot. So that's one thing. Another thing as well is there will be plenty of people out there who've seen that, you know, the price has effectively gone up, and they've gone, okay, it's annoying, but I still want that car. And they're being declined.
Right, okay.
So what happens when the market gets a little bit iffy is lenders can be a little bit more cautious.
Risk averse.
So, exactly that. So, and what you'll find is maybe in like a year or so, interest might drop again, and the lenders might go, we haven't actually financed many cars lately, so we should probably start saying yes a little bit more often. And unfortunately, it's one of these things. Basically, the person on the phone who you're talking to isn't the person actually lending you the money. So they're always going to be very cautious because essentially, if the deal goes sour and you don't pay, they'll get it in the neck. But there's also generally not a massive incentive for them to get you finance on a car. And at the end of the day, it's the underwriter's decision. And at the moment, the atmosphere generally seems to be that they're a little bit cautious. Of course, this has also pushed the real price of cars up. So, even if the list prices stayed the same, the interest rates for people buying on finance, and it's a common misconception that, people buying high-end cars or people that have a lot of money don't buy finance. No, they do. Even if they have the money to buy the car cash, a lot of people choose to finance it anyway because they want to do something else with the money or whatever, or that's just how they like to do it.
It's a lot of money to tie up in it.
It's a huge amount of money.
Particularly supercars and things like that.
Absolutely. Interest going up also means that a lot of people who are buying cars for speculative purposes means that actually now there is a reason to keep the money in the bank.
Right.
Whereas when interest is 1%, and people say, oh, there's an asset over there that I can buy and I can get 3 or 4% or maybe even more in terms of cars. We've seen some crazy price increases in cars over the last few years, over the last decade really.
Yeah.
And that's a really tempting way for people with money to make more of it. Why would you have £1 million in the bank when your mate just bought a car for £1 million and a year later sold it for £2 million? That's just daft.
Yeah.
And though it's extreme, it's happened with a lot of cars, and it's a kind of self-fulfilling thing. Enough people believe it will happen, they'll make it happen.
Yeah, no, that's it. Because the other thing I thought about with finance as well, and I don't know, with these adverts I'm seeing, this is anecdotal evidence obviously, but just me seeing more of cars that I'm just interested in, thinking, blimey, that's a good price, all of these reluctant sales popping up. I don't know whether someone had it on a finance deal and then that's come to an end now. Maybe they fixed that rate 2 or 3 years ago, and then suddenly their monthlies could have shot up if they wanted to keep it. Is that how it works with finance on cars? Or is it kind of like remortgaging a house? Or
yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
If you get to the end of your deal, generally speaking, if it wasn't a hire purchase and you don't then own the car outright, you either have to sell the car or hand it back to the dealer or refinance or pay the balloon payment. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. The other thing actually that's going on as well is it has slowed the market a bit, because there are people, say like myself, I've got the F12 and that's on finance, and it's a reasonable deal. It was a decent deal at the time I got it. It wasn't a great one, but it was a good one. And I've thought about changing that for something else, not because I don't like the F12. I love the F12.
Yeah.
But also I'm greedy. I want to drive all the cars.
Stuff, yeah.
And there comes a point where if I want to go and buy a car that's like $2,000, I'll just buy a car that's $2,000. But if I want a car that's $100,000, I have to sell something. I'm not making that much money, contrary to what people think about us YouTubers. But the problem is that if I were to go and buy something else, the interest rate is going to go up by quite a bit. Maybe they'd actually say no to me anyway. And also, I've looked at it a few times, and depending on what car you get, and there's a lot of different things that go into the equation, not just price and interest rates, you've got residual values and all that sort of stuff. It is possible that I could change for a car that's like 30 or 40 grand cheaper and actually wind up paying the same amount a month. Yeah. Which is basically I'd just be paying more interest. Yeah. And I just don't fancy that. So that's slowing things down as well. I think in your case, there's probably also a bit of psychological stuff going on, which is that when you are selling a car, you're paying attention to that market really closely, more closely than you normally would. Yeah. So you may be noticing stuff. The whole reluctant sale, that's a cliche as old as time. Yeah.
It's funny though, because I bought my DB9 2 years ago roughly. Yeah. And I was obsessed with the DB9 market back then. Yeah. And the DB9 market today is very different. Like there's multiple cars now up for sale that I think myself, blimey, I'd buy my car obviously for the price I've got it up for, but I'd also buy this other one that I've seen and things, and they're so much better than they were before. It's interesting, and that's kind of like the purpose of this conversation really. I wanted to get your opinion on whether you think we're in a bit of a storm, because the other reason as well, the second reason I think interest rates could affect the performance used car market is mortgage rates going up massively. So this is hitting it from a different angle. So, a couple of years ago, you could get 1.5% interest rate on your house. With the same residential mortgage company now, you're looking at 5%. And that Absolutely. Is massive, if you were paying 1,500 quid, I think I did the maths the other day, 1,500 quid for a month for a mortgage on 1.5%, and then you remortgage today on 5% because you had to, you'd be paying £700 more, close to 50% more. And I know loads of people around me that are saying, oh, my mortgage is going up 350 quid, mine's going up 400 quid, stuff like that. And that's the other thing that made me think about whether we're in this sort of storm with used car prices, because if you're suddenly losing £400 a month, the first thing that, as a family, you might be thinking well, hang on, look, we need to tighten things up here.
Well,
that sports
£400 a month is a GR Yaris's payments, was a Supra's payments, like a Golf R, like there's a whole bunch of stuff. And you're absolutely right, I think. It's not just the mortgage payments. Rent is also increasing as well, not by the same amount, but it is going up. Cost of living in general, like everybody's talking about it. You cannot ignore it. Like, you know, just even sundry items in the supermarket, like everything's got a lot more expensive. I try not to pay too much attention to some of these things because otherwise you just wind up depressing yourself. But also, it's so extreme at the minute, you cannot ignore it. You know, the shopping basket that I know was always 50 quid is now like 80 quid. And this has hit absolutely everybody. And, you know, from the top to the bottom in society. And the thing is that, you know, there will be a lot of people who previously had the budget for, let's face it, a toy.
Well, it is, isn't it?
Be it a bike, be it a sports car, be it whatever. And now they're going, actually, probably should do without that. And like you say, this is combined with the cost of people that actually are still in the position where they can afford it and want to buy it. It's become more expensive for them as well. So it's just slowed things. But I wouldn't be too worried in your circumstance right now. Your car's at an odd place in the market. I generally find anything up to about 20 grand is fairly easy to do as a private sale. Like, people are generally happy. Like, I've sold cars. I never owned a car that was more than 15 grand until I got my Evora 7 years ago. And I would buy and sell privately, just exclusively. And it was really easy. I'm talking about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grand cars. And because people have that amount of money, they have that as cash. They come buy, they've sold their car, they buy your car, like you do it as bank transfer, like it's done. It's not a vast quantity of money for the kind of thing you're talking about. Once you start to get beyond about 20 grand though, people do want to finance. Though you can now finance a private sale, it is also still more expensive than doing it from a dealer because there's extra risk involved for the finance company. People, especially with something like an Aston Martin, they will want to, you know, the safety blanket, as it were, of buying from a dealer. Even if, we discussed this a little bit off camera, it may be like a false friend because, you know, if you to get that's a 14-year-old car now, like, there's not really a warranty out there that's going to cover that in any meaningful way, unless you do get a dealer that's actually really good and will stick by their product and go, you know what, if it does break in a few months, I mean, and they are bound by the Consumer Rights Act, but, and they'll sort it out. But, like we said, someone's going to have to pay probably 6 or 7 grand extra for that privilege, and
if you set that money aside,
just,
I mean, me personally, I would like to just look the previous owner in the eyes, like the person who's had the car for the last couple of years. I like to look them in the eyes, and I'd like to think I'm a good judge of character, but, you know, and actually hear from them and everything, and you don't get that as a detached, isn't there? You know, when it goes to somebody else, and if if you get a warranty, if you buy from Aston Martin themselves, obviously you'll pay right at the top of the market, but, you know, their timeless warranty is apparently really, really good. But
it will be.
But most other third party...
I'm not sure it'd cover that, though. I think it's probably too old.
Well, I don't...
Usually it's up to about 10, 12 years.
It's only very valuable DB9s, or like special ones that I see them sound now. Like I think I spoke to...
it'd have to be like a late DB9.2, wouldn't it? So
I don't think they bother. They just sort
of... They wouldn't, because there's no margin. Because let's face it, you know, they're going to have to sort some paintwork. They're going to have to do some stuff. They have to be VAT on the margin of what they sell. Like, so actually, like a 10 grand profit to them, they look at it and go, it's not really worth our time. I know lots of cars that are like 50, 60 grand, and the dealer wants a £20,000 margin. Because as far as they're concerned, otherwise, it's not worth their time. They've also suffered in late from customers being smart Alex, where customers will look at the We Buy Any Car price and go, well, that's obviously what I can get for the car's trade-in. And then they look at their price and go, oh, well, We Buy Any Car pay 20 grand, you're asking 30 grand, you must be making 10 grand. And it's like, it's not really how it works. But I know a lot of dealers now where cars like that, they've just gone, we can't be bothered. Because the customers expect the car to be in the condition of a car priced like this, but they want to pay the money of like an absolute dog, and we just can't be dealing with it. So, the market's in a strange place, but, you know, the upside is that you're looking to change into something else.
Well, look, I didn't want this video to be like a massive doom and gloom, like horrible thing. I might make a really clickbaity thumbnail for this, and I apologise if I do. We're going to do something like that.
Do you want to get a thumbnail crying on my shoulder?
That's like it. Oh, no.
There you go, there's your internet.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, we can just snap that. What was I going to say? Oh, God, I've lost my trail of thought now.
Changing, yes.
Okay, so if you're in a similar position to me and you need to change your car, stay on the used performance car ladder. Like the property ladder. If basically you can only really lose, even if we are in the Ivor Storm and all of those things we talked about with interest rates, is affecting values at the moment. If my plan is sell my car, even if I've got to sell it for significantly less than what I paid for it, if I immediately then buy something else as well, which is in the same market, so you get it for a little bit less.
It's exactly that.
Then that it should be okay. So stay on the ladder. It's only if you get out now and then buy again later.
You got to think of cost to change, because this happened like a year ago. Remember when car prices went nuts?
Yeah.
And because nobody could get a new car, because dealers have basically shifted their inventory for like buttons, and the factories were still trying to catch up, and then we had the chip shortage, and like cars were just like gold dust.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, oh my God, it's amazing. My dealer just called me. They've offered me like $5,000 more than I paid for my knackered Fiesta 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're so happy. And you go, yeah, that's great. So what are you going to do after you've sold your Fiesta to them? Well, I'm going to go and get that. You're like, yeah. And that's now $6,000 more expensive than it used to be. So actually, you say, okay, maybe let's say you get $5,000 less for your DB9 than you like. But if the car you want to move into is also $5,000 less, and different bits of the market have moved in different ways.
Even if it is like X about 1,000 less, and then I save less X about 1,000 for the next one. At least if it just kind of softens that blow a little bit.
I think it will.
That's kind of the plan, really.
Like the market has always stuttered. The market has always had peaks and troughs. Like it will always be the way that it is. And I think, you're in a good car. I think you'll manage to get into something else. I think hang on till at least the end of like August, like mid-September.
Okay, yeah.
And then if by then you still haven't managed to shift the car, maybe that's time to think talking about a dealer.
Talking about a sale or return or something like that.
Getting it shifted. But until that point, I'd hold fast.
Yeah.
You've got a good car that for what it is, you get sports pack, it's the glass key, it's the extra power, and it's priced currently, I'm not going to say because this video will date it, but it's currently priced, I think is what makes it one of the cheapest examples with all of those things.
Yeah.
And it's not a 100,000 mile car or whatever. And I've driven it myself, and it's a good solid car. So
definitely. And I think that's sound advice for anybody watching this as well. If you want a
DB9, buy his.
There's that obviously, but I mean as well, just don't lose your cool, because all of that does sound quite scary, doesn't it? You know what I'm saying about the interest rates hitting people and things like that. So if you can afford to not lose your cool, I reckon that'd be sound advice for people. Don't do what everybody's doing. If everybody's panicking and start selling their cars for cheaper, don't follow that if you can. If you can afford to not sell your car for a bit, then that's great. Or if you do sell it, get out and get into something else. Don't sell now, and then when interest rates sort of level out again in a couple of years, buy back in, and then at a much higher price.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier. I sold my 968. I sent it to auction through Bonhams. And, you send a car to auction, you take a risk. But also, I did that because there was a car that I wanted. I've been looking for it for a long time. It had cropped up. I'd negotiated a price that I felt was good. So I was like, okay, I need to release the capital in the 968. And I'm happy to take the risk on not getting maybe the maximum back for that. But it went to auction and, okay, I didn't get quite as much as I'd like. But I got paid within an hour.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you're like, it's frustrating. But on the other hand, the car was gone. The money was in my account. I can move on, get something else, life carries on.
Here's something else I've been saying to my wife recently is if you feel like, oh God, it's on my car for less than what I wanted and stuff like that, remember that's a good problem to have. Yeah. Like if the worst thing happening to you like right now, this is what I'm thinking with myself. Like, I'm going to sell my Aston for cheaper than I bought it for. That's a good problem to have.
But also, you say about that, like it's one of these weird things that's happened in the last few years that people have now got this notion that they should be able to keep their money in a car and it not lose any money at all. You've driven it. It's like somebody put it very well in the comments section of a video I did, where they said it's like going on holiday for 2 weeks and then at the end of it expecting your 20 grand back.
Yeah.
No, you've had your 5-star hotel and your lobster and caviar supper and that, it was never going to be free. You've had an Aston Martin for a number of years.
Absolutely.
So, to be fair, there's a lot of people that would be delighted to say, I had an Aston Martin and it only cost me $5,000.
I know. Yeah, no, exactly. So that's I think it's important to sort of remember that as well, that you're in a strong position if you're worried about the value of your used performance car.
Ultimately, I mean, what that car's cost you, I think when it's sold, it'd be a good video to do, is look at if you just bought like a BMW 320d.
Yeah.
Like, probably, if it did break, it gets fixed, so it doesn't cost you anything bar the monthly payments. But you're like, I guarantee you, more or less, that the cost of the Aston versus the cost of that, once you factored in the depreciation, you probably find out the Aston is as good as, if not better, in terms of retaining value.
Absolutely. And that's just made me have a thought, actually, thinking about new cars. And this is why I think this will only be like a temporary problem as well, because new car prices, because of the cost of production has gone up, hasn't it, a lot? So new car prices are a lot higher. Like I saw today that the AMG powered Emira is going to be £81,500 from £81,500.
Which is the car that they said was going to be £59,995.
Exactly. So look, here's something else I've been thinking. So
That's
even if we're in a bit of a lull at the moment, don't lose your cool, because new car prices, they can't drop them if the cost of production's gone up. So if like new cars come out, like £81,500 for an AMG Emira, suddenly if I was looking at buying one of those, I think, you know what, I'm just going to buy an Evora 400. Because then the void is so big, isn't it? And then that will start pushing the prices up.
You get it with the Ferraris now. People go like, "Oh, you're worried about buying, a Ferrari for 150 grand," and then a new one comes out. I'll be like, well, considering the new one is 300 grand, no, not really. Like, when the price of the new one keeps going up and up and up, I mean, do we know what a DB12 is going to cost yet? No,
but it's probably going to be quite a lot. And suddenly, like a Superleggera is going to look like really tantalising.
That's the thing. I mean, I think actually now is almost the time. This is the thing. Now is the time actually to buy a DBS Superleggera or something like, or a DB11, because I think everyone's going to be panicking, going, oh my god, the DB12 is coming. But you're like, yeah, but it'll arrive. And if you go, yeah, it's here, but it's also 230 grand. Once you've optioned it, it's going to be like, well, guess what? If you've got a DB11 that's worth 100 grand, it is not going to affect it at all.
No.
At all. So
if anything, it'll kind of make it look better, won't it? And they can't drop the prices of them because the production's going up as well.
I'd only feel silly if I just spent 300 and whatever it is grand on a DBS 770.
Yeah, but then they called the DB12 the world's first super tourer, like a few weeks after the 770. Anyway, we won't get into that. No, I really hope the DB12 does really well. I hope it does.
I'm sure it's a great car. And I really want to drive one, but
there
you go.
No, look, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And I'll do an outro on my way home. But what do you think? Have you experienced any of what we've been talking about? Do you think prices are coming down? What do you think is going to happen? Let us know in the comments below. I think it'd be really interesting for everybody to head to the comments, share their experiences, and read from other people as well. Get an idea. Is it just me, or are other people seeing this as well? I want to say a massive thank you to James once again. What a true dear friend. He helps out me and the Dadcars channel so much, and I really appreciate it. A dream of mine is one day somebody will find out about Jayemm on Cars from my channel, subscribe to Jayemm on Cars, and then comment on one of his videos and say, oh, I found the channel because of Dadcars. I mean, that would be amazing, because I know a lot of you guys watching found Dadcars because of Jayemm. Here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Although the cost of money with interest rates, the cost to obtain it, is going up, the actual value of money is decreasing because of inflation. So although it costs a lot more to borrow £100,000, I mean, £100,000 just isn't worth as much as it was even a couple of years ago. And they're not going to make these sports and performance cars that we love, naturally aspirated, beautiful cars. They can't make them anymore, can they? So I do truly believe that we will look back on this window of time, however long it is, with interest being like it is, and we'll cringe at how much money or how little money these sorts of special cars were sort of trading and swapping hands for. So look, don't let it put you off. If you're thinking about buying something, you can comfortably do it. I mean, I'm going to sell this and I'm going to buy something else equally as exciting. But thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe. Hit the bell icon if you want to see when my car sells, what I sell it for, how much it all cost me. And see what happens next with the Dadcars channel. Oh, and check out this video here. I think you'll like it. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.